Yeah, if you could. Health and safety, you'll have a nightmare, won't they?
Do you want food? Well, I thought we were just going to take salads.
How are we doing, Richard?
And it's up.
Just because it comes off his kind
Testing. And that's still like 2, isn't it, Richard? Yeah, happy with that. Obviously, people are talking, so as soon as... Yeah, I mean, that's it. Once you've got people being quiet, I mean, the volume that comes out is fine. Well, it's really difficult when those people talk. Yeah. And we're going to close the doors. Just Richard already picked up. Really just the two of them. Yeah. And that sounds fine to me. Well, yeah, well, I say it's because people are talking, but as soon as it's quiet. Don't need that. No one has that How old school is that?
Testing. All right, we're going to get started. We're going to get started soon. quiet down, please. All right, welcome. My name is Nic Cary. I'm the co-founder here at blockchain.com. I want to welcome you to our London headquarters. A few quick things. If everyone needs to use the restroom, it's through the hall and to the right. In the event, an unlikely event that there's a fire tonight or an alarm that goes off, there's a staircase. We'll all follow the marshals down that way. One quick note from our security team. We take real care to make sure we have a safe space for everybody. You're welcome to take photos of everything going on around here. Just please do not geotag the facility. And that is our one little request for tonight. Other than that, we're really excited about the content we put together for you. So tonight we're going to have our hosts here from the Bitcoin Cash community, and I want to give a quick shout out to Richard, who has spent a lot of time putting this together for you. He's been in and out of here for the past couple weeks. He has worked diligently with all of the speakers to make sure we have exceptional content for you. It takes a lot of work to put these things together, so a quick little round of applause for Richard, please. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to go through the agenda quickly so you guys have a sense for what's going to happen tonight. Our organizers are going to be here to visit with you about the merits of Bitcoin Cash, an incredible community of entrepreneurs and technologists and futurists that are working to build a more fair financial future for everyone. And I think the topic couldn't be more important at any point than right now. So we're going to have a presentation first by Brett Scott. Brett is an accomplished author. He wrote a book here that everyone should go pick up called The Heretic's Guide to Global Finance, Hacking the Future of Money. And it's got a giant squid on it, which means that's very fun to me. So we're going to be hearing from him. He'll be starting off the evening. Next, we're going to have Roger Ver. Roger is the reason I am standing in this room. And it was in the summer of 2013 that I was introduced to Roger via a friend that I went to university with and ended up getting ensnarled in the cryptocurrency community. So I owe an enormous debt of gratitude to Roger, and he gave me a shot to go into this world and to learn together with you guys, and so I'm incredibly grateful to him. We're going to hear from him, and I'm very excited to get to hear from him about all the updates that he's working on. We're going to have a break at 7:50, so everyone will have a chance to go refill, get some more food. Please go transact with our vendors. It's awesome that they've come here to accept Bitcoin Cash, and we're really grateful for them, so we'd love to have you guys spend a little crypto on them. We're going to hear from Rosco and then Tobias, and then at 9 p.m. we're going to break for a networking session. There'll be more drinks, and at 9:30 I will be diligently removing everyone from the premises, and wishing you all a pleasant evening. So without further ado, we're just going to go ahead and get started. Real quick, everyone from blockchain.com, can you quick raise your hands in here? So we got a bunch of folks from the team. For those of you that don't know, blockchain.com is the world's most widely used cryptocurrency wallets. We've had over 43 million users signed up, and we're really well known for that. But recently, we have launched a cryptocurrency exchange, and we have a very special offering for you guys. There are discount codes on a pair of sunglasses you can pick up over in the kitchen. It'll give you fee-free trading for 30 days, and we'd love to get your feedback. So if there are things you feel like we can improve on, if there are ways we can make our wallet work better for you, if there's features you'd like to see in our trading venue, please speak to any member of our team. We want to get that feedback from you tonight, and we'd also welcome you to come join us in that venue for trading. Finally, we've recently announced a lending operation here at blockchain.com, so if you guys have any need for those things, we have a $100 million lending operation that is now running, and there are folks in the room that happily talk to you about those things. So without further ado, please welcome Brett Scott. I'm so excited to have him join us tonight, and welcome to Blockchain.
Hello. Hi. It's good to be here. The last time I was in the Bitcoin Cash community was at the Satoshi's Vision conference in Tokyo. How many of you, who was there? All right. It was pretty cool. It's kind of an awkward name now, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm not actually day-to-day involved in the crypto community, though. I kind of like parachute in and out occasionally. But I'm involved in lots of different things around the financial sector, different forms of alternative finance, alternative currencies, actually pre-crypto alternative currencies. So kind of go back into like mutual credit systems and local currencies, all sorts of strange things. This slide, I kind of like this slide. It's slightly ridiculous though, but this is an old book that I wrote, The Heretic's Guide to Global Finance. There's now a pirated version that exists out on the internet, so you don't need to buy it anymore. I have a new book coming out next year, which is all about cash and digital money and all sorts of stuff. So I'm a little bit like exhausted and burnt out from writing it, but I'm going to try and convey something tonight about cash, digital money, crypto maybe. Richard asked me to talk about the war on cash, which I write a ton about. So I don't know, let's see how it goes. That's cash. I'm going to try and sort of like say a few basic points about the nature of cash, and then we're going to try and go into the nature of digital money, and then something about the sort of the war on cash that's going on, and how maybe that Bitcoin Cash relates to that. The first thing I want to say about cash right now is that, at least in our modern forms of cash, it's state issued. So if you're trying to like define what the current cash system is, it's state money. In fact, it's the only form of state money that we can hold. All right, bank deposits are not state money. All right, bank deposits are bank money. It's a separate form of money to state money. So cash is actually the only form of state money that we're able to hold, which is called M0, monetary base. Okay, so it's like the kind of default base money in our society. I would often refer to it as a state IOU. Okay, it's like which is a complex thing to go into, but it's a sort of promise issued by the state, at least the central bank. A second feature of current forms of cash. It's a bearer instrument. Okay, now this here is a bearer bond, which is not the same as cash, but essentially a bearer instrument is essentially if you hold it, you are the owner. Okay, if I see cash in your wallet, I'm not going to question whether it's yours or not. I'm going to assume it's yours. So a bearer instrument, the owner is the holder. This is different to things that require people to register who the owner is. Okay, so it's a bearer instrument. This confers upon it a property of it's anonymous, right? Whoever holds it owns it. You don't need identity attached to it. Okay, so this is a third sort of key feature of a cash system is it's anonymous. And the way that you move it around is you essentially physically transfer it in some kind of peer-to-peer fashion. I mean, you guys kind of know this stuff, right? But I'm sketching it out in kind of like blunt ways so we can try to figure out what people talk about when they're referring to like digital cash, for example. Like how many of these features are actually replicated in what you call digital cash. So, of course, cash moves around. So essentially it kind of gets issued out by the state, floats around in a network and society, and at some point gets sucked back up into the state system. I mean, there's a whole bunch of complexities around that. It actually goes via the commercial banking sector a lot of the time. But that's basically the cash cycle. Now, digital money in our current society is very different to cash, all right? It's this here. It is, and when I say digital money, I'm referring to the mainstream digital money systems. I'm referring to, you know, your credit card, your debit card, your bank account, okay? This is privately issued money. It's private IOUs issued by commercial banks, all right? This is not state money. This is a separate form of money that exists on top of the state money system. In fact, deposits are issued by banks. Now, we have this like weird problem. Oh, what happened there? We have this weird problem in linguistics where we confuse the verb deposit with the noun deposit. So we say I deposit something into the bank. So I'm using this verb, but actually what deposits refer to in banking parlance are things issued out by banks, promises issued out. All right, and those promises essentially we then transfer between ourselves, and that's the entire digital payment system. Okay, as us passing bank digital promises around. And essentially what we do is we contact these giant data centers and we request that information attributed to us personally get edited. And that's the whole digital money system. We have essentially accounts which are, the banks keep score of how much money is attributed to us or how many promises are attributed to us. And it appears like something like this, right? And we have to then prove who we are when we want to interact with the system. So we basically send them messages saying, please, will you edit my account and attribute those promises to somebody else's account? And this is where the whole kind of interbank payment system comes in, and the central bank and so on. Does this got like kind of clear to you guys? I mean, do you guys know that system, I'm assuming? 10 minutes. Kind of getting into it now. I've been having a real rough run of events recently because I'm like so like burnt out. I mean, I did like 2 events last week and it was just like, I felt like I was on a different planet. It's quite weird. Everyone like looks at you on the stage. They like sit there and they convey all this, push all this energy into you. It's quite like an interesting dynamic. Sometimes I really like it, other times not. It's like all right now. Okay, so this is the way that you look at this. This is like one kind of way you can look at this system. Private databases controlled by commercial banks. You send them messages, you ask them to edit those private databases. Of course, you guys know the crypto system, try to like squeeze all these signals into a single public database and then replace all these guys with a kind of decentralized mercenary network of miners. Okay, and that's how the sort of basic sort of structural difference in these systems is. So let's just quickly look at this graph here of cash versus current digital money. State-issued public IOU, anonymous bearer instrument, physical transfer without intermediary, that's a cash system. Digital money, bank-issued private IOU, which is redeemable for state cash at the ATM. Ledger entry attributed to an account, and you ask these guys who run these accounts to edit it for you. Okay. So when you talk about a cashless society then, what we're talking about is when you eliminate all of that, but you also eliminate this here. I mean, you have some sort of strange system where the bank deposits are not redeemable for anything. All right, you can't go to an ATM to get what's been promised to you. So this is like quite an interesting question. If you want to know why they're discussing all the stuff around state digital cash right now, all these debates around central bank digital currencies, it's probably because of this here. If you can't actually redeem your bank deposits for what's been promised, you have a kind of a legal problem. So that's something that's going on. But you can automatically see this system here is controlled by the banking sector, so who has an interest in promoting this cashless society? Well, it's obviously the banking sector, right? Now, I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but there's been an overt war on cash that's been going on for years and years and years and years. That's one thing I want to say about this use of this term cashless society, which is so dubious. We do not call whiskey beerless alcohol, we do not call AC/DC folk musicless band, and we should not call this cashless society. We should be calling it the bank-dominated society. That's what it is. That's a gigantic euphemism, all right? So what we call cashless society is essentially you're moving to increasing bank domination over everything, okay? That's what it is. Now, obviously, there's a lot of people who have commercial interest in this. Well, for one, the payments companies got huge commercial interest in this. All these banks have huge commercial interest in this, and also many states have an interest in this. I don't have time, I only have 7 minutes, so I don't have time to go into all the dynamics of how this war on cash goes on, but it's gone on in many different forms. Basically, the key takeaway point to think about, though, is just that the way this is presented in the public realm is this is some kind of organic, the death of cash, some kind of organic bottom-up thing that's coming from consumer choice in society. And if you ever want to know how corporate power works, one of the key ideological things that corporate power relies upon is pretending that the little man controls everything. If you look at it, even the whole, this is embedded in economics, the idea that the market consumer is what determines what is produced in markets. If you ever look at actual, like, real market power by corporations, it's often from the other side, it's from the supply side, all right? These guys decide what's going to happen, and they basically engineer society to make it happen, okay? So Visa Europe has an overt propaganda campaign, which they will openly talk about. They want to make cash seem peculiar by 2020. They've already managed to achieve that in London. They've won in London. London has fallen. London fell last year to the banking sector. Everyone switched to digital payment en masse. So Visa won. They succeeded in what they're trying to do. There's been many of these things, like Boris Johnson was in bed with the payments industry for this year. The Penny for London campaign, I don't know if you guys saw this. Barclays and Bob Diamond and many other sort of financiers were partially behind funding this campaign, which they're trying to convince people to use digital payments on the London Underground. Barclay Card is behind it. But also you can see overt examples of this in India with the demonetization there. Paytm, which is a massive digital payments company, were all over this, fawning over Narendra Modi when he attacked the cash system. Visa openly talks about how they work with the Indian government to support its demonetization, how they doubled all their merchant acceptance through this process. So there's clear connections between the digital payments industry and the state in trying to attack the cash system. And what's happening now is the banks will use their success in signing people up to the digital payment system to justify shutting down the rest, further opportunities to use it. So right now, or to shut down further opportunities to use cash. They're using it now to shut down all the ATMs. And the best way to think about this is imagine you enter a casino and you walk in there and you hand in cash at the counter and you get chips back, right? And you can go internal to the casino and you can use those chips. Now this is a very good analogy for the digital payment system. When you're depositing money in a bank or cash, they're essentially issuing you digital chips in return, okay? And when you want to go back to the cashier, imagine they said, actually, we're not going to redeem this for you. You have to drive 40 kilometers away to redeem them back for your cash. That's literally what's happening right now in the banking system with them shutting down the ATMs and shutting down all the branches. They're trying to stop you exiting the systems, okay? And it's straightforward. And they're trying to use these sob stories that it's not economically viable for them to redeem your promises anymore. Like, I don't give a shit if it's not economically viable. It's what they've promised, right? You have to essentially allow that. Okay, so the last part. Is making sense so far? Yeah. So, what's the massive psychological win that the banking sector has? That they've actually there's a whole generation of people that are forgetting that money actually can exist outside the banking sector. So what they refer to as Generation Z or millennials, this whole thing around people actually forgetting that there once was an outside to the banking sector. All right. And then there's this giant sort of enclosure that's occurring in the imagination. Old people always remember that there was this distinction between the concept of money in the bank and money out of the bank. But this has now become something that's becoming very sort of dubious. People are feeling that the digital payment system could detach from the state money system. So the question we're then left with is how do we stop people drifting to sleep in the banking matrix? And of course, one way to do this is to actually protect the cash system. Okay, that's something I work upon, right? But of course, this was something that the people in the Bitcoin community and now the Bitcoin Cash community, this is part of what inspired a lot of the sort of cyberpunk stuff around thinking about, like, shit, what actually happens if the system, we do go cashless, we need to form a electronic cash system, okay? The last few things I was just going to say, though, is that the key problem that the Bitcoin community and now the Bitcoin Cash community, which was often a source of the battle going on, is that it's actually failed in a sense to convince people that this token that's issued is actually something that can be widely used for commerce and can actually replicate cash. I mean, you guys know a lot about this. I'm going to leave Roger to talk about that and so on, right? And you're going to be really careful because these guys are going to step in, right? Because they don't have this problem, all right? They don't have this problem about saying, is it like money or not? Is it the thing? I mean, they just have literally a wrapped up US dollar that you can pass around, all right? It's pretty damn powerful in many ways, and this is getting quite close to what they call digital cash. And of course, states are going to get involved in this very soon, potentially. Although the banking sector will attack these guys if they do, because the banking sector doesn't want the states to do this. But there is potential for a lot of interesting stuff coming up, and hopefully that gives you a little intro to the current state of play. That's my email address. Thank you. Woo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Roger Ver. For those of you...
We have some time for Q&A.
Do we? Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure if we're going to add that in. So we'll I'll run the mic around then.
Hi, my name is Alex. Just a question for you, because you mentioned that everyone is pushing for cashless society. That's well and great. In UK, official data says that people who are included in financial banking system are 60% of the population and 40% are not. Forget the fact that 60% of those 60 are net losers. But we have 40% which are not included in any financial instruments, which means that we have 20 million people in the UK. If we stop cash, they'll die. Or we have a war, or whatever combination. How you address that?
Sure. No, look, I mean, the agenda is to move towards the society that you can... So what basically has happened is that the states are now what's called financial inclusion. That's what you basically talk about there. It's like they're saying, we want to move towards this digital system, but there's some people who are kind of being left behind, or they're sort of stranded, right? So now what the state has to do is form these like life raft systems. They try to like rescue people and pull them into Visa and the banking sector, all right? So actually the state's often working on behalf of the banking system. Actually lots of charities are as well, right? They will say, let's rescue these poor sods who are stuck in the cash system and pull them into this corporate enclosure. Okay, now, so that's part of the public debate that goes on. Actually, often part of the biggest critique of cashless society is often there's unequal access to being exploited by the banking system. All right. I mean, that's a rhetorical spin, right? But that's what the power dynamic is. That's the baseline discussion that we're having. All right. But absolutely. I mean, look, there's a lot of dynamics to this cash debate. One of the biggest ones for states in terms of why they would stop it is resilience. They're shit scared of systems going down. All right. And so for example, in the US, when hurricanes are approaching, there's a 500% increase in the demand for cash because people know we don't want digital money when the electricity goes down.
Yeah.
So that's
valid for digital currencies. If we have a solar flare injection, I mean, half of the world would have.
Sure. All I'm saying is that, like, while there's a political trajectory and a sort of commercial trajectory to try and destroy the cash system, it's not guaranteed that it's going to happen, right? The rhetoric certainly is about that. Well, certainly to make it harder and harder and harder to use.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That's a microphone, so you can believe it or not.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's very interesting. So obviously there's another thing that is at play here, namely that the nation states are very interested in an organized electronic record so they can tax you. So of course banking the unbanked for the state is often about ensuring they can leverage taxes, which means that they have an alliance with the banks. But where they don't have the alliance is for the digital currency. If it's done the wrong way for the banks, it'll of course mean a current account with the central banks, which the commercial banks are not interested in. So have you studied what's happening in China, and what is your opinion on that?
I actually don't have any educated things on China. I mean, that's a whole world in itself. But yeah, I mean, China, you've got extremely close connections between the banking sector and the state, right? But they're actually everywhere. So the dynamic between the state and the commercial banks, I mean, the central bank sort of sits as this like quasi-state entity between, it's quite an interesting thing because it's supposed to work on behalf of the banking sector as well as the state, right? So there's this kind of push-pull. In the central bank, so there's certain divisions in central banks that believe they have an obligation to continue producing cash. Right? So the German Bundesbank, super pro cash, and they're actually super pro privacy as well. All right. But then on the other hand, they have their banking members who have different agendas. Actually, one of the debates, I'm kind of skirting around your question, but one of the debates that's been occurring because of the central bank digital currency debate, part of that has been that they're saying, shit, if we leave the banks to do digital payments by themselves, all people will be excluded. Therefore, we have to form our own state digital money to include those who are not included. Then the banks attack that. They say, but that's going to undermine our current account system. So then the state says, okay, what we will do, we'll only allow people to use a certain amount of state digital money or something like that. So that debate's like live right now. Nobody knows what's going to happen with that situation.
This is what the central bank in Sweden, they worked out. Once they started the project, they worked out that they would have to have a current account for every Swede, which meant that they would screw over the
but look, the debate in the central bank digital currency, they're not necessarily planning to do it as an account system. I mean, the central bank doesn't want to deal with like 40 million people trying to open accounts, right? Like it's a huge admin hassle for them, and they can do the banks.
You mentioned the figure in UK, which is 20 million. But I forgot to mention that in the world we have 4.5 billion people who have no access to financial services and money. Not because they have no identity, are illiterate, and the banks have no access to them at all, but they also have no money. That's why there is no even physical way to get fiat currency to these people because there will be no. That's why we have idle 4.5 billion people. That's why we have this great opportunity that if we can adjust these 4.5 people, we have another debt, which also creates a golden bridge to banks to jump into the digital or private account.
Okay, last question.
Hi. I'd just like to ask you about two questions, which I think are big issues. And really, everything else we discussed depends on these two being solved. And one is whether it's cash money anyway. Bitcoin is cash money. And the only two bits of advice that HMRC have issued in the UK have said, right at the very beginning, straight away, no messing about, paragraph 2, Bitcoin is not money. Bitcoin is not money, Bitcoin is not currency. Okay? Being classified as a digital good. And we're not going to be able to use this as a currency, cash, if we're all having to account for capital gains. And I know it's the same in the States. And the other thing is the fungibility issue. But there was a big court case in Scotland in, I think, the 17th century, which determined that that any note was the same as any other note. In other words, it doesn't have history. But our currency does have history. So the only way we're going to get any sort of fungibility along the lines of the cash we used to is to destroy the history or obscure it. Yeah. So there's two issues of it not being treated by anybody, and certainly not HMRC as a currency. Well, not a currency, as cash money. And second, the fungibility issue. I think we have to solve those two urgently.
Sure. I mean, maybe the speakers after me can elaborate on that. But I mean, the only thing I'll say is that the crypto community's main claim to replicating cash is the fact that it's created something that looks like a digital bearer instrument. Okay, like that's the key thing, right? Something which some kind of weird hybrid system which relies upon ledgers, but actually can only be initiated by the person who holds a private key, right? So it has cash-like qualities to it, all right? Can't be remotely initiated by somebody else. That's the digital bearer instrument concept, and that's the most profound thing in the crypto world, right? Is this idea of being able to move these objects around. And then, of course, the big task of the Bitcoin Cash community is like, how do you actually make it into a proper monetary system? I mean, I'm going to say it's the main Bitcoin community is totally and utterly clueless about monetary systems and how monetary systems actually work. I mean, it's actually embarrassing hanging around and listening to those guys sometimes. If you're actually serious about making a monetary system, you got to like leave that shit behind and think about how do you actually make these proper circuits, economic circuits, embed it in real populations. Otherwise, it's going nowhere for sure.
Okay, I think we'll pause on answering your question because I think the next speaker will be particularly eager to address certainly the question as to how cryptocurrency addresses whether or not it's cash and some of the properties it has. So thank you so much. Let's give Brett a quick round of applause. Again, he's the author of The Heretic's Guide to Global Finance, Hacking the Future of Money, so check that book out. Next, it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to Roger Ver. For those of you that don't know Roger is the world's first investor in cryptocurrency and companies. He's an investor in blockchain.com, in Kraken, in Ripple. He is the chairman of bitcoin.com, and I'm probably missing about another dozen significant contributions he's made. I'm not kidding when I tell you that he has an unlimited amount of enthusiasm for economic freedom, and I've probably spent a few dozen hours with Roger over the years, and no matter where he goes, he is setting someone up with a cryptocurrency wallet and donating a portion of his net worth away, and he has done this to tens of thousands of people. And so the cryptocurrency community owes an incredible debt of gratitude to Roger. But instead of me telling you about how impressive he is, I think just listen to his arguments and let's hear from Roger about the war on peer-to-peer electronic cash. Thank you.
Thank you for such a great introduction, Nick. Now I have better live up to it with my presentation here this evening. So for those that don't know, I've been involved in this space coming up on 10 years now. It's been a fun ride though, and I'm even more enthusiastic about it today than when I first got started because now there's actually people all over the world that are also interested in this, whereas early on, Roger, shut up. So anyhow, title of my talk today, The War on Peer-to-Peer Electronic Cash. So we already heard about the war on cash in general. Now we'll talk about this war that's been going on peer-to-peer electronic cash. And the start of Bitcoin, right? What got Bitcoin started was the Silk Road. And Ross Ulbricht started this website that allowed anybody to buy and sell basically anything that sole purpose wasn't solely to harm people. So mainly drugs. Marijuana was the most popular thing that was sold on there. And I heard about this website, the Silk Road, on a radio program in the US. And I wasn't interested in the drugs that people are buying and selling at all, but it occurred to me like, what kind of money could they possibly be using to do this? Because everybody knows normal money and normal banking systems aren't very conducive to this sort of thing. So I went on the internet and Googled it, and that's how I heard about Bitcoin, was in relation to them using it for actual commerce to buy and sell things on the Silk Road. So that was 2010. And then in 2011, This is a real picture of a real billboard that was right on the side of one of the busiest expressways in all of Silicon Valley, for anybody from that area. This was right on the side of Lawrence Expressway near 101. And MemoryDealers.com, that was my company, that was my business that I did before I got involved in cryptocurrencies. And we were the first established business in the entire world to start accepting Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency for that matter for payment. And so it actually got worldwide attention. So this little billboard in the heart of Silicon Valley got reported on by newspapers as far away as Germany. And literally it got worldwide attention because it was the first time that a real actual business that was selling real products to real customers and real businesses was accepting Bitcoin for payments. And we didn't get anybody that actually bought our product with Bitcoin, but it definitely got a lot of attention around the world because of it. And I literally had, my customers from all over the world calling me and saying, "You accept Bitcoin for payment now?" And I said, "Yeah, you want to pay me next time in Bitcoin?" Like, "No, we don't have any, but we thought it was interesting." So, and then that brought us to 2012. And a lot of people here probably have never seen this logo. This was the original logo for blockchain.info before it was blockchain.com. And it was a Rubik's Cube. And this was the original website. And if you look at the block height here, it's block number, 173,000 at the time of this screenshot in 2012. I think the current block height's 400 and something thousand at this point, getting up there. And then a lot of people won't even remember these mining pools. DeepBit. That was one of the first mining pools. BTC Guild, I think, is completely gone. BitLC.net, I don't even remember that one. You could donate at home I think it was the SETI search for extraterrestrial intelligence. You could donate the Bitcoins you were mining to help with that back in the day. So anyhow, really fun piece of history. At some point when blockchain.info started to get more and more popular around the world, we decided we should probably change the logo so Rubik's Cube wouldn't sue us over that. So luckily it never came to that. So, and then in 2013, I launched BitcoinStore.com, which was the first website that it was actually selling things that weren't fiber optic transceivers used in network routers and switches. We were selling more than 500,000 consumer electronics products, so like laptops and MP3 players and USB drives and pretty much any electronic gadget you can think of. We listed the entire line card from Ingram Micro and Tech Data for people that are familiar with that industry. We listed their entire line card at cost, and we can see right here the cost per Bitcoin at that point was around $31. And if you look really close, this is a screenshot from Bitcoin Magazine. The author of this article was Vitalik Buterin. Before he'd even started Ethereum, he was busy reporting as a news reporter on things happening in the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And so this website really did a good job of getting people all over the world to start using cryptocurrency for actual payments. And it was a great pressure point for companies like Tiger Direct and Newegg and others to have to start accepting Bitcoin as payment, because I was busy on social media trolling them, sending them screenshots of all the orders that were just flowing through and telling Newegg and Tiger Direct and Amazon saying, "Hey, look at all these orders we're getting by accepting Bitcoin. You guys are missing out on this." And so that led to merchants all around the world starting to accept Bitcoin as payment. So household names like Newegg and Microsoft and Expedia and Gift and on and on and on. And it was just amazing to see all of these businesses around the world start to accept Bitcoin for payments. And then in 2015, things started to change a bit. So there was a company called Blockstream that raised a huge amount of money from people that weren't actually using Bitcoin in commerce to buy and sell things. And they had this sort of attitude, and this is a direct quote from a Blockstream employee and Bitcoin core developer, George Tiemann. He's saying, "Higher fees may be just what is needed." And we can see I have some charts here showing the fees going up and Bitcoin's market share of overall cryptocurrencies going down. And then in 2016, we have a quote from Luke Jr., the guy behind SegWit, if you're familiar with that, saying it is no longer possible to keep fees low. And he's right. With a 1 megabyte block size limit, it was no longer possible to keep fees low. And we can see, do I have a laser pointer here? We can see that the fees skyrocketed right there as well. So, and that brought us to 2017, right? We can see this is in one single day, right? People paid millions of dollars in fees on that day just to use the BTC network because there wasn't another choice there. So it was a really, really giant problem for anybody that was actually trying to use Bitcoin to buy and sell things or use it for payments of any sort. And I remember there was this great big giant debate going on the internet. And the overall attitude from people on the small block side of the scaling civil war was, stop complaining about high fees and just fork off already. Get out of here. That was their attitude over and over and over, online everywhere. And it was actually so bad that they would actually ban people's accounts from being able to discuss this and delete posts. And there was just this massive wave of censorship that took place. And then the next step was the one single Bitcoin that everybody all over the world had been using for commerce split into two versions of Bitcoin. So the BTC version and the BCH version. And they both share the same Genesis block and the same transaction history up until the point that one single version of Bitcoin split into two versions of Bitcoin. And we saw before, the attitude before the split was stop complaining and just fork off already. And then after the split, the attitude then suddenly became, Bitcoin Cash is an attack on Bitcoin. What are you guys doing? Where? Well, what we're doing is the same thing we've been doing from the very beginning. We're building peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, just like in the title of the very white paper there. And here we are in 2019, and we're seeing Bitcoin Cash being used all around the world. There are significantly more physical places accepting Bitcoin Cash right now today than there are accepting the BTC version of Bitcoin. And there's probably more online places accepting it at this point. And I'm sure with some of the business development deals we have brewing at Bitcoin.com, I'm certain there will be significantly more places accepting Bitcoin Cash than any other cryptocurrency here shortly as well. And this is the roadmap for the future of peer-to-peer electronic cash in the form of Bitcoin Cash. And you can see all the details are here available for you at bitcoinabc.org. A really fun thing here is we can see the adaptive block size here with market-driven growth to 1 terabyte blocks eventually. And that was the plan originally for Bitcoin. The first question I had in my mind when I was reading about Bitcoin for the first time was, well, can this scale to actually be money for the world? And if you go back on the bitcoin.org website, not today, you'll have to use the Internet Archive. And if you use the Internet Archive and look at bitcoin.org in 2010, 11, 12, 13, maybe even into 2014, you can see they had the entire roadmap there as to how Bitcoin would scale to be money for the entire world. And that was, as Satoshi said, to just allow the blocks to get as big as they need to be as more and more people start to use it. And that's the roadmap for the original Bitcoin, to more or less, and that's the roadmap for Bitcoin Cash today. And so that brings us to 2020, next year. So Bitcoin.com is launching a $200 million Bitcoin Cash ecosystem fund, where we're going to be investing in businesses that are building on top of Bitcoin Cash. And so if you have a business or you know a business that's looking for funding to build on top of Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin.com and our Bitcoin Cash ecosystem fund is someplace you should come knocking, because we're really, really eager to build more economic tools to bring more economic freedom to people all over the world. And I think Bitcoin Cash is the best tool to do that. And you'll hear a lot of people on the internet say crazy things like, oh, I'm willing to die for BTC, and BTC is the best in everything, and this and that. And well, I switched, right? I used to be promoting BTC. Today I'm promoting the Bitcoin Cash. And tomorrow, if something even better than Bitcoin Cash comes along to bring more economic freedom to the world, I'll be right up here promoting that. Because it's not about which cryptocurrency, it's about the end result that we're working towards. And we should choose whichever cryptocurrency is the best tool to achieve that economic goal of bringing more economic freedom to people all over the planet, regardless of where they're born, where they're living today, young or old, black or white. Bitcoin Cash is for everybody, and economic freedom needs to be for everybody. And that's why we're busy building these tools, and we're devoting so much time and money and effort to do this. So that's the end of my talk. Rosco's up next, but maybe we have a moment or two for some questions if people have.
Yeah.
Just a quick question on my side. First question on, we see volatility in Bitcoin.com, which maybe treated as a negative thing.
Bitcoin.com or Bitcoin Cash?
Bitcoin itself. But that's a perfect instrument for speculating, and that's why it has the call interest, and we should be thankful for that, because otherwise that would not take any kind of effect. Now, how are you addressing that element from being Bitcoin Cash? How are you stabilizing the currency itself?
So the more economic activity you have, the bigger the market cap will be, and the more stable the price will be in terms of that. But there's still a long ways to go. So just purely from an investment standpoint, if Bitcoin Cash succeeds in getting traction around the world and being used as peer-to-peer cash for the world, the price of Bitcoin Cash could easily go up by 1,000 times, right? 1,000x return. I don't see a scenario in which BTC, as a store of value, whatever that is supposed to mean, which seems to be this nebulous moving target, I don't see a scenario in which BTC can go up 1,000x from where it is today. So there's going to be a lot more volatility around on the road ahead, but that volatility is what attracts lots and lots of people and traders and speculators to cryptocurrency. So I don't see it as all that much of a bad thing. And there's starting to be more and more economic instruments in which people can hedge their risk from the volatility. So if people want to not be exposed to that, they're able to do that as well. So any other questions?
Any other questions? Can I ask one question? Yeah. Can I ask you the same question in sort of slightly differently? In the UK, there's going to have to be a case where a taxpayer appeals against their obligation to pay tax on their gains on BCH. They're going to have to argue that it's a money and that no capital gains tax is payable on currency money. And that's going to have to go through the HMRC appeal system. It may end up in the High Court. And only a judgment, really, at that level is going to be sufficient to establish BCH as a cash money in the UK. So all I would say is that would you at least consider supporting such a UK taxpayer who wished to dispute whether or not capital gains tax was payable on his gains or her gains?
You don't have to convince me one bit. We'd be more than happy to help financially support that. We'll do fundraisers online. We'll do news stories about it. We'll be helping lead the charge. And if I can put on my conspiracy theory hat for a moment, it does seem really interesting though. So in the early days of Bitcoin, everybody knew this was supposed to be money for the world. This was supposed to be for people to be able to buy and sell things. And suddenly the narrative changed that Bitcoin's not supposed to be money. You're just supposed to hold it. It's just supposed to be the speculative instrument. And if you look at the power structures in the world that control everything, peer-to-peer electronic cash is very empowering of the individual and very disempowering of the legacy financial systems and legacy governmental systems. It's interesting conspiracy theory to think, like, did they come in and intentionally co-opt the roadmap of Bitcoin from being peer-to-peer cash for the world to being a store of value that doesn't really disrupt the legacy power systems? And maybe. And whether it is or isn't, Bitcoin.com is more than happy to help support taxpayers in any jurisdiction that want to challenge the laws in regards to capital gains tax on cryptocurrencies, and not just with Bitcoin Cash, with any cryptocurrency. We're a fan of anything that works. So great question, and if that happens to be you potentially, come talk to me, and we'll make sure we help you out on that front.
So how keen would you be if Libra turned out to work? So the point is that in my view could be a commercial co-opting of money, so wrestling it from the state. Now that's obviously why the states are not going to accept that ready-handedly, but there might be all sorts of deals that can be made in the same way as these have been made with the private banks.
Yeah. So.
But what if it works?
Yeah. So I guess we have to define what works is, and so from my point of view, works is empowering individuals to have more control over their own lives, and disempowering governments and corporations from being able to control people. And so if Libra works for that in that sense, then great. And in fact, actually, Libra seems to be falling apart at the moment, but I was hopefully optimistic, because let's say it works decently well for empowering individuals over, Bank of America or whatever the most common bank in the UK is. That's a good thing, and it's nice to have more choices. The more choices you have in life, the better off you are. And if you don't like something, don't use it, right? If you don't like Libra, don't use it. If you don't like Bitcoin Cash, don't use it. If you don't like the pound sterling, don't use that either, because now you have other options. Yeah.
Thank you.
Michael. Yeah, Michael. Hi, Roger. I've got a question which might...
Can you hold the mic up here?
I've got a question which might answer the questions raised by Brett Scott's presentation. The lack of cash, or the war against physical cash. Have you thought of, say, working with the esteemed Eric Hillman over there and producing paper Bitcoin Cash, which is backed fully by Bitcoin Cash electronically, to give people a chance of using paper money, number one, and number two, to allow people that aren't familiar with or don't want to use electronic wallets, like people of my age, not myself, and even younger people who don't want to use phones and so on.
So here's an example of exactly that. It exists right now today. So yeah, and here, that's the beautiful thing about any time you look out in the world and you see a problem, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if this existed, or how wouldn't it be nice if people could do this or that? That's a business opportunity. Any problem you see in the world is a business opportunity. You go and figure out how to solve that problem for other people, and you can make their lives better, and they can make your lives better in exchange for paying you to solve that problem for them. So any problem you see in the world is a business opportunity.
Okay, two questions. One is privacy. Is that a nice to have or a need to have to be successful for Bitcoin Cash? And what's the roadmap around that? Because that's kind of a big thing. And then the second question I have for you is, for normies that you're trying to sort of evangelize the idea of open peer-to-peer cash, what's like the three bullet point sound bite to give? You've obviously been pretty successful at evangelizing. When you're talking to people, what are the two one-liners you just drop on people to make them get it?
Yeah. So first question: privacy, need or a want, or that sort of thing. I've actually changed my opinion pretty substantially on privacy coins in general. And so I used to think that all the best cryptocurrency, the ideal cryptocurrency, would be totally private all the time, every time, by default. And I think if you purely look at the characteristics of what makes money, I think that's still correct. But if you look at the practical world we're living in, we're already seeing governments say that you're not allowed to, they're telling exchanges and businesses that they're not allowed to use Monero, they're not allowed to use Zcash, they're not allowed to use some of these privacy coins. And so I think it's probably better from a strategy standpoint if the privacy layer isn't at the actual protocol layer, it's a tool that sits on top of that. And it just so happens that Bitcoin used to have that tool, and it used to be built directly into the blockchain.com wallet back when it was blockchain.info. And I think Nick and I had a brainstorming session about what to call this. And the idea that we came up with for branding it was shared coin, because everybody likes sharing. How can you be opposed to sharing? And the way it worked is your transaction coins would be shared with everybody else, and they'd all be jumbled up. And any of these blockchain analytics companies that were trying to decipher what happened would hopefully have a really hard time and just give up. And then with the full blocks and the network congestion and the high fees happening on top of Bitcoin, that no longer became practical on top of Bitcoin. But now that same exact thing exists on top of Bitcoin Cash. It's called Cash Shuffle. You can go to cashshuffle.com right now today and get a Cash Shuffle wallet. And soon, cash shuffling will be built directly into the 5.5 million Bitcoin.com wallets. And I'm hoping that that's going to exert some friendly competition pressure on blockchain.com as well to have to offer cash shuffling directly into the Bitcoin Cash portion of the blockchain.com wallet. So, but you can use that right now today at cashshuffle.com. Coming soon to the Bitcoin.com wallet, and hopefully not too much long after that to the blockchain.info or blockchain.com wallet as well. So, but currently I think that it's better to have privacy as like an added feature on top of the protocol rather than at the protocol itself, because then the governments can't complain directly that we can't see anything at all. Because now we can have the best of both worlds with our marketing with Bitcoin Cash. We can tell the governments, oh, the blockchain is completely transparent. You can see every transaction everywhere all the time. This is much better than physical cash. And then for everybody that installs the Bitcoin.com wallet and soon the blockchain.com wallet, it'll be shuffling up your coins all over the place automatically by default. And we're calling it privacy mode for the normies. So privacy mode, you don't have to figure out what is a coin join transaction into this. It's just privacy mode is turned on. And so the quick elevator pitch, how do we get normies interested in this? I pretty clearly came from the libertarian free market perspective, but I'm the minority in the world, right? The libertarians are the minority in the world. So how do we get your just average Joe on the street involved or excited with this? Well, tell them that they can save 20% on every single purchase from Amazon by using websites like purse.io. And pretty much everybody, regardless of their political persuasion, will be excited. 20% off Amazon? Wow, that's a really big deal. So you can buy anything and everything on Amazon already. Well, now by using Bitcoin Cash and a website called purse.io, you can save like 20%. And it works in the UK as well. I bought things, I was having it delivered to the old blockchain.info office over on Old Street. I was buying duffel bags and different random things here. I think jiu-jitsu equipment as well. It was being delivered to the office, and I was paying for it back in Bitcoin at that time. So it's a great way to onboard normal people. Is just tell them 20% off on Amazon by using Bitcoin Cash at purse.io.
So MC's prerogative. I'm going to ask one more question, then we're going to break for some drinks and some food. So there are a lot of aspiring potential entrepreneurs in the room, maybe some potential investors, and some young adults that don't necessarily know how to take risk on. You are one of the most prolific investors in the industry, and you have had vision. You've had what is your strategy when you think about how to invest some of your capital into new projects? And would you just share some of that thinking with us, because I know there's some people that would really benefit, and I think it'd be an interesting thing to hear from you.
And that's probably the hardest question of the evening. I guess the best advice I can give is don't be afraid to think for yourself. Think for yourself. Listen to the arguments that other people give, but then evaluate them. And just, even if everybody around you is telling you that the world is flat or whatever other nonsense, right? And maybe there's some flat earthers nowadays as well. But think for yourself, right? Have you ever experienced jet lag? I know I am right now. That's a pretty good indication that the world is round. But there's been lots of things, right? So think for yourself. And even if everybody else out there is saying something different, maybe they're not right? So think for yourself. And I remember in the early days of Bitcoin, almost everybody thought it was dumb. And I remember talking to a friend of mine, telling him all about Bitcoin, why this is so amazing and this is going to change everything. And after I carried on and on about it to him for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, his final reply to me was, Roger, if you think Bitcoin's so great, why don't you buy more of it? And he said it very sarcastically, but I replied to him, you're right. And so I went out the next day and bought some more. He waited a couple of additional years before he bought any Bitcoin, and he still did just fine, but think for yourself. That's how these new inventions and discoveries and the things that propel mankind forward are from people that are willing to think outside the box and think for themselves and go against the grain. And another thing I like to harp on from time to time is if you look at the world we live in, it's the criminal lawbreakers that move society forward. And it doesn't mean that it's all criminal lawbreakers, but let's take a real simple basic example, right? In America, it used to be illegal for black people to sit at the front of the bus. And Rosa Parks had the courage to ignore what everybody else was saying and say, no, this is not right. I'm going to sit at the front of the bus. And she was a criminal lawbreaker, but she made the world a better place because of it. And it's extra ironic to be saying this here in England, right? As someone who was born in America, America used to be part of England. And a bunch of criminal lawbreakers in America said, no, we are going to break the law. And they literally started shooting government agents, and they had a rebellion. And they won that rebellion, and I think the world's probably, arguably, a better place today. I'm a fan of, and there's some argument to be had there, but I'm a fan of decentralization, not just in digital currencies, but in governance around the world, right? Some people would call me an anarchist, but if you look around the world right now, we already have anarchy amongst the nations, right? There's however many different nation states around the world. They're all in a state of anarchy within each other. Well, let's have a few more until we get down to 7 billion individual states, or however many people there are on the planet. And, it may take some law breaking along the way to do that, but if people aren't willing to step outside of their comfort zone and do something that may be illegal, the world isn't going to advance to become as good of a place as it otherwise could have been. So if you see something that you know is morally right, and even if it's maybe illegal, do some soul searching and decide, like, should I do this anyhow, or should I build this tool anyhow, or should I be involved in this anyhow? And ultimately, the decision is up to each and every one of you individually. But if you look at history, it's the criminal lawbreakers like the Rosa Parks and the founding fathers of America and so many others that move society forward. And we have a really, really, really powerful tool here with blockchains and cryptocurrencies to help make that happen. And so I'm really, really excited to be a part of that. And I think the fact that you guys are all here so late on a Tuesday night means you're excited to be a part of that too. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Let's all go have another drink and chat.
All right,
So
thank you. All right, we're going to quickly take a break for drinks. The bathroom's around the corner. Please fuel up, get some more food, visit the vendors, and we'll get started on the technical side of talks in about 10
We had such, we didn't film it earlier, we had such a big dinner. Okay.
You have to transact if you come here. Please. Yeah, you show. Yeah? Okay, you do it now. I'm going to give you a shout out. You don't transact. Or you can do a donation if you want to the end. Yeah, we're bringing up some donations. So you probably have to do that. Every time I look at the reflection, yeah, my head is also now. I don't have that. No, it's alright.
1, 2. Whoa, whoa, whoa. 1, 2. No.
That's the question. I think they're going to sue me. Don't worry, don't worry. I think a lot of people pay the tax. They got charged $1 million. Just ask the
Just started next. Okay, thank you so much. So we're transitioning now to a more technical part of our presentations this evening, and I'm very excited to introduce you to Rosco. Rosco Kalis is a software engineer and smart contract expert with a lot of experience on Ethereum, including contributions to the toolchain. Lately, he's been working on smart contracts for Bitcoin Cash, and he's going to be telling us a little bit more about that tonight. So let's give him a warm welcome. Thank you very much.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this talk. It's going to be a bit more technical, like Nic said. In this talk, I'm going to be making the case for Bitcoin Cash, specifically for smart contracts. And if we want to make the case for Bitcoin Cash or for any cryptocurrency, we also have to look at it in the grander perspective of things. So we have to sort of compare it to the other existing projects that are out there, the alternatives, like Ethereum or like BTC. And to do that, I took a look at the top 10 by market cap of all cryptos. And I started filtering out the projects that don't really have the...
Rosco, let me just see if I can set that up.
All right.
I'll try go back and forth a few times to see what's better.
Yeah, I think it's good. Okay. And so I took out the projects that don't really have a smart contract system of their own. And then I took out the projects that are basically the same as BTC in terms of smart contracts. So that leaves BTC, ETH, BCH, and EOS. I'll have to disappoint because I don't know anything about EOS today. So that leaves Ethereum, BCH, and BTC. So I'm going to discuss these projects briefly. And I'm going to start off by sort of comparing Ethereum to BTC. So smart contracts on Ethereum are Turing complete, which means that they can express any kind of computation given enough resources. So kind of like regular computer programs. And they have a persistent state, which means that you can have variables inside your smart contracts that can be updated or changed using smart contract interactions. So for instance, for a token on Ethereum, you can have a list of all token holders and their balances, or for a DAO, for instance, you can have all the participants in there, and these can be changed by, for instance, calling a transfer function. And these properties make so that these smart contracts on Ethereum are usually long-lived smart contracts, so they're very persistent, maybe a bit bigger, they have a lot of participants, and they might have some upgrading mechanism, but usually they stay the same for a long time. On the other side, we have Bitcoin, which smart contracts are not Turing complete, so they can't express everything. Most notably, the DEC looping. But more importantly, they're stateless, which means that you can still have variables inside your smart contracts, but they cannot be changed, for instance, through interactions with the smart contracts. So if you have a multi-signature, for instance, you can just change whoever can sign the signatures. And these properties usually make that these kind of contracts are more like agreements rather than sort of whole full-fledged applications like with Ethereum. And these contracts are much more short-lived as well, and they have fewer participants, because when you want to change something about these agreements between people, you're much more likely to create a new agreement, so a new contract with new variables. And then if we look at these, at the implications of this, we see that Ethereum contract transactions are very much dependent on states, and that means that all the Ethereum nodes need to keep track of all the states of all the different smart contracts that there are, which can have some serious performance implications down the line. And it also means that the order of the transactions within a block is very important, as they can be a transaction can have different effects if it's in a different order in the blockchain or in the block itself. And this makes things like parallelization, but also things like sharding more difficult. And on the other side, we have Bitcoin, whose transactions are not dependent on any state, so they can be verified independently of each other and even independent of the data that exists in the blockchain itself, which is which has the potential to be very performant. And it also means that the transaction order is not really important, meaning that you can change this order to be more efficient, and it also makes parallelization and things like sharding a lot easier. So that's basically a quick overview of these two platforms. So on the one hand, we have Ethereum, which has a lot of functionality, but comes with some performance issues. And on the other hand, we have BTC, which theoretically has a lot of it has the performance, but a lot more limited functionality. And Bitcoin Cash is based on the same sort of on the same code as BTC, but in the last few years there have been some significant improvements to the smart contract functionality, and that's through these two network upgrades. The first is the May 2018 upgrade, and that introduced these new opcodes or these new functionalities inside the scripting language for Bitcoin Cash. And the most important thing to me in this update is that this now allows you to encode and decode structured data like dictionaries or arrays inside your smart contracts. And then the second update is check data sig, which basically allows me to verify a digital signature inside a smart contract. So if I sign any message and I provide the signature and the message to this contract, then the contract can use this new opcode to make sure that I was actually the one who signed it. And so if you take these things together, so you have the structured data together with signature checking, you get two sort of interesting use cases. And the first is oracles. So oracles are basically taking outside data and bringing it into your smart contract or into your blockchain. So that can be like Bitcoin Cash, USD price feeds, or it can be the outcome of the US 2020 elections, things like that. And then your smart contract can act on these things. And I've added a small sort of use case. There's definitely multiple use cases that come to mind, but one example that I created is the HODL vault, which is basically it enforces that you can only spend your money after a certain price has been reached. So you say, okay, well, I just want to, I want to keep on hodling. I want to keep on hodling all my BCH until it's like $1 million. You tell that to your smart contract, and then you have this oracle that is publishing new data and saying every block they're publishing new price data, and then somewhere down the line BCH reaches $1 million, and you provide this structured data to the smart contract, and you can. Do I have a pointer? Yeah, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Pointer doesn't work on screen.
So then you can check this message. So you can check, oh, this is actually from the oracle, and then you can use the decoding functionality to extract the data inside this this message and check that it's actually above the threshold value. And then the second use case that there is called governance, which is a bit more complex and a bit more technical. But basically the way it works is regular Bitcoin transactions use an opcode called checksig, which checks that the spender of this transaction has signed the transaction. So basically he signed the transaction, I want to spend this Bitcoin this way. So if you then provide sort of the thing he signed, so the transaction object pre-image, then you can use checksig and checkdatasig with the same signature and verify that they actually signed this object. And this is maybe not a very interesting example, but if you see the things that are included inside this object, then it becomes interesting, because you see that, for instance, there's the value of the output, and there is a hash of all the outputs, and these things allow you to, for instance, enforce that money from a contract can only be spent to one certain address. Or, for instance, we can see that with Lyco's Mecenas contract, which is basically recurring payments, and it enforces that every month you can only send a specific amount of BCH to one address, and the rest has to be sent back to the contract itself. And you can implement all these kinds of constraints with that, which is very, very powerful. And a lot of people some people are working on sort of finding out what the limits of that are. So how are these contracts written? Traditionally, there's this language called Bitcoin script, and that looks a little bit like this. And even if you're a developer, even if you are already known with other programming languages like Python or Java, this doesn't really look very familiar to you. And it's very difficult to actually understand what kind of logic is encoded in this. And that's why I created the project CashScript this year, which basically allows you to go from writing smart contracts like this to writing them like this, like we've seen in the earlier examples as well. And this looks much more familiar to people who are already programmers. So if you created some other code with something like Python or JavaScript, then this will feel a lot easier for you as well. And with CashScript, we had basically three goals. It was accessibility without explicit Bitcoin script knowledge, which is what I explained just now. Then also integration within JavaScript applications, so you want to integrate these smart contracts into websites and things like that. And then also familiarity for existing Ethereum developers, because we want to enable Bitcoin Cash developers and Ethereum developers to perhaps cross over more. So after creating this language, we ran some tests with some test subjects, and basically the conclusions of these tests were that using CashScript leads to fewer errors, faster development, and easier integration of these smart contracts, which is basically a win if we look at the goals that we set out with. But on the other side, we also see that the original Bitcoin script still allows you to create more optimized code, so smaller code. It gives you more low-level control, so you can fine-tune everything so that it's exactly how you want it. And there's still some functionality that's available in Bitcoin script that's not necessarily available in CashScript. And in the end, whether you use CashScript or Bitcoin script, this technology that I talked about, governance, is still pretty damn hard to do well and to do bug-free. So that kind of brings me to my final slide, which is the future of smart contracts. So what kind of work can we still do to improve upon this? And one way I see is through compiler optimization. So we want to have the output of this CashScript compiler, for instance, to be as small as possible, so that you can use that instead of Bitcoin script and not really suffer too much performance loss. We want to have a better abstraction for governance. So instead of having to manually push in all the data and sort of check all the signatures, why can't I just tell my smart contract, okay, I want the outputs to be 5 BCH just to this address. So things like that will definitely be possible through more abstraction, but they aren't currently. And then the final thing is bigger smart contracts. So currently we're seeing more and more interesting smart contracts, but there's still a consensus size limit on these smart contracts that's 520 bytes, which is pretty small for any serious smart contract. So I think it would be very beneficial to raise that limit sometime in the future. And that's it.
So Ethereum has this Trufflebox framework, which provides convenient unit testing framework and migration deployment scripts for various networks. Is it also easy to deploy the stuff with CashScript, and do you have any frameworks like that? Just curious.
So we created the CashScript language and then also corresponding CashScript SDK for JavaScript, which is kind of a sort of crossover between like existing Ethereum SDKs like Web3.js, but it also has some Truffle-like functionality. So it's not everything that Truffle, for instance, offers is there, but parts are.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else? Throw it back. Were there any other questions relevant in the audience? Oh, last one. So what are you working on at the moment?
So I already got started on the first point, so compiler optimization. But I think the most important thing in the coming time is one, making governance more accessible so that more people can start working with that, and also I think making SLP more, so tokens more accessible within smart contracts as well. So I want to sort of work more on that, where those two things meet, smart contracts and tokens on Bitcoin Cash.
Anything else? Yeah. Just a quick slide.
How can we know that smart contracts made nowadays will be compatible with future hard forks or developments in the main code?
Well, I think of course Bitcoin Cash has hard forks rather than soft forks like BTC, but I think in the case of smart contracts we want to be very conservative with not breaking existing functionality. So for instance, with the past hard fork, we saw Schnorr signatures for multi-sig smart contracts, and the way that was implemented, there was a lot of thought into not breaking existing multi-sig contracts, so that there were multiple possible implementations that were being discussed, but in the end, they made the trade-off to at least not break any old contracts. So people are definitely looking into that when they release new features.
So what is your optimal scenario the next 5 years? Will there be sort of a cross-compiler between any smart contract and any blockchain? So you can imagine 1 or 2 or 3 environments with middleware, APIs, all of these things. Do you see the same developments as with ordinary programming languages on Web 2.0 and 1.0?
I think that's a very that would be very valuable to have at least. And Tobias has also done an interesting presentation about a new transaction model called Nimbus for Bitcoin Cash that also kind of goes into that a bit more. So I would definitely recommend checking out the video he posted about that, on how we could actually achieve that.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Rosco.
Okay, one last presentation tonight, and we're very lucky to have Tobias Ruck, who's a Bitcoin Cash developer working on all kinds of incredible projects. If you haven't been following him on Twitter, you probably should. It has been pretty intense for last week with a lot of the stuff he's been announcing. So tonight we're going to be hearing about be.cash, which is what he's here to talk about. And it's not for the striptease.
I got 3 phones in my pockets. Whoever, raise your hand if you ever had 3 phones in your pocket. That's not I need an HDMI cable. today is on smart cards and smart contracts. So yeah, I posted this picture a couple of days on Twitter, and people went pretty wild. Like, okay, I taped US dollar paper on smart cards, but those are actually funded smart cards that are kind of working right now on Bitcoin Cash. And yeah, then once I posted this, people were like, how did you get into this? Why even come up with such an idea? And yeah, so for that, let's go back to a couple of months. Has anyone an idea what that is? Yeah, Justin.
I was behind the camera. That's the BCH div meetup.
Yeah, that's the BCH div meetup. Yeah, it's in Australia, as you can see if you're putting the flags. And it was really cool because we were able to spend Bitcoin Cash at a lot of places, like maybe 100 right now, in that order of magnitude. And that was super cool. Yeah, but for me it was like, okay, I directly went like, okay, I'm gonna buy some stuff, and I think I bought chicken, or I think it was schnitzel. Yeah, if I wanted to buy schnitzel, I went to the counter, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pay with Bitcoin Cash, but yeah, my roaming wasn't working. So yeah, I turned around. Luckily there was a queue, and I was like, can I borrow your internet real quick so I can make a transaction? And of course they were very kind and gave me the opportunity to use the internet. But that's not I think that's unacceptable for a currency to be like, you have to turn around and ask people, can I have their internet, and to be able to make purchases. Like, people wouldn't be so insane and be like, okay, I'm gonna go to a different country and I won't get any credit card or any cash, because if they run into the no service problem, then that's a problem. Yeah, so I was pretty bummed about that. Like, it made me like, I really like Bitcoin Cash, but if even like I went with Chris Pacia and he with me together, we sent a transaction twice actually, then accidentally, because there was some issue in the network. And so it's like, if even the two developers of Bitcoin Cash aren't able to figure out how to use Bitcoin Cash properly, then there might be a bigger issue at hand. So I thought about that issue and came up with an idea, which I published into a paper just recently. I call it be.cash or be.cash. Some people don't like the name because there's a moniker for Bitcoin Cash that's kind of derogatory. But I think this thing wants to be cash, so it's a nice name. And I got the domain be.cash, so that's also a plus. So, but what is it? What is it? It's a secure sender offline payment system for Bitcoin Cash. So if I go to a merchant, whatever device I want to use, for example a smart card, this thing doesn't have to be online, but all the information it needs to create valid transactions or signed transactions, or create something that can be used to make transactions, is on this thing, and I just have to tap my whatever, and I'm good. Yeah, those are the smart cards. This is my Twitter, by the way, so if you want to see more pictures of smart cards in all different angles, then follow me at Tobias Ruck. And so yeah, I think the best way to illustrate how these cards work is just to show them. So maybe Roger, do you want to help out real quick?
My first time too.
Me too. No. So I've got this is my phone. Whoa. Oh, this is the wrong phone again. Technical issues you don't want to have.
So how soon will we prepare the PDF? How soon? How soon will we go to get one?
The card, they are mine.
Oh.
But maybe I changed my mind. Yeah. So yeah, I wrote this pretty crappy wallet, but I only had 1 day to prepare. So I mean, I'm not sure if it will work, but we'll see. Like, this is an adventure, and let's see. So I've got 2 modes. One to like check the balance. So it says hello, and we've got 8 millibitcoin cash on there. So now I have to enter the address, unfortunately manually, so I have to use a scanner real quick. So I'm just
scanning my QR code.
Scanning a QR code. Now I copied the QR code. Go back. So I'm pasting the address into the. I'm now rotating everything. Not very used to Android. And yeah, let's do 100.
So if I receive some money, this will give a big green check mark on this page. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's see if it works. So I entered all the stuff. So this would be what the merchant would do beforehand. Like they obviously would enter the address way beforehand, and then they would enter the amount like right at that second. So we can tap this thing.
This is a dangerous demo, by the way. So.
Yeah, it's very, very dangerous, and but I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Ah, no.
There we go. The card did the signing for the transaction.
Yep.
This card has no internet other than it gave the signed transaction to the Android device that then broadcasted it to the worldwide Bitcoin Cash peer-to-peer network, and then my phone detected the transaction. Payment received. Is that a correct summary?
That's perfectly correct. Yeah.
So you can now put Bitcoin Cash on the cards like this, and then just tap to pay when you're ready to pay at places, and that's the offline peer-to-peer cash for the world. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to hijack the talk.
Thanks so much. All right. Yeah, and the cool thing is that, as I showed you, this works from a phone, and hopefully I'll be able to add iOS support soon because they enabled NFC, and then anyone in the world who has a phone can set up a store where they accept cards with where they accept cards, and those cards, like I bought this from Alibaba for $3.50, and that's like it scales the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. So those cards could literally be today $1 each, and if you don't earn a lot and you're unable to afford like a phone, then those could be a real lifesaver to get you into your own into the banking into like to be your own bank, because this card, it's basically like a bank account. You don't have to set up a bank account, and then you're connected to the financial world.
And you can make multiple transactions with the same card.
Yeah, exactly. So
you don't have to demonstrate.
Yeah, if you saw it said like no, I didn't send a full amount. It was like 25 cents or something, and the rest was sent back onto the card without even the card knowing. So yeah, so in case it doesn't work, but it did work. I was prepared.
Fantastic.
Can you? Or is it like important? Because then let's move it to the slide.
Yeah, questions at the end.
Yeah, because I'm running out of time, but I'm not too much. Okay. Oh yeah, so I didn't animate the button box. Anyway, so the first question people always ask, like, does it store UTXOs? So for those that aren't too familiar with UTXOs, UTXOs are the things you own in Bitcoin. Like, those are the things you spend and receive. And this is my glass. Yeah. And yeah, most crypto cards, there are some crypto cards actually on the market already, Kaching and Satochip, but they store or sign UTXOs. and that's actually, I think, that's not too good, because if the merchant doesn't broadcast the transaction, then your card gets kind of screwed up because it assumes, okay, this UTXO is gone. And for some cases, if you want to receive money, you have to have the card present. So currently, if I have this address, I can send him more money. I don't have to interact with Roger. But with UTXO-based cards, you have to have the card around. And it's also pretty slow because those cards are pretty damn slow, except at signing signatures. And I tried just adding 1,000 numbers, and it took 10 seconds. So that's pretty slow. And sometimes it's unavoidable to get online. And if you're offline most of the time, then that's not good. Yeah. So, but how does it actually work? And the solution is to
water.
Oh, my throat. Yeah, water. Is the nonce. So, this card has a nonce stored in it. It's like a counter that's just increasing with each transaction. And this nonce is actually linked to the blockchain. So for this card here right now, there's a UTXO on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain that has this nonce written into the smart contract. And then, into the smart contract. And then if I tap my phone, this nonce gets incremented by 1. So it's basically a new transaction. The smart contract signs the following, so the nonce, the address where it's sent to, and the amount. And then I send it to the smart contract, which is, okay, this looks legit. You can now redeem 50 cents. And then it creates a new transaction output with the nonce 1. Now there's a smart card has the nonce 1, and the smart contract has the nonce 1. So you can just go ahead and swipe again. And the coolest thing about this, I think, is that if you say, okay, I'm going to pay 50 cents, you're going to pay exactly 50 cents. So you don't have to worry about transaction fees, any transaction fees. It's like current credit cards. You pay what you pay, and you don't get charged. Only the merchant gets charged. With this system, it's the same. So for people using it, they're like, there aren't any additional costs for me to use this card. Unlike with current wallets, where usually the sender pays the arguably small fee, but it's still a fee, and maybe people aren't comfortable with being the person who has to pay the fee. Yeah, another thing on the smart contract is that this is currently not possible on BTC and other chains, because the Bitcoin-based chains, because they lack the check data sig verify opcode. So this is an excerpt of the smart contract that's on the chain, linked to this card. And this verifies the nonce and the signature. And and this was previously not possible before we had the Bitcoin Cash upgrade. And I think there will be lots more upgrades coming for Bitcoin Cash, which will make even better and stronger smart contracts, which will be used for payments. Not just like gambling and stuff, like literary payments. So let's stream for 180 milliseconds or longer, however long that swipe took. Maybe we can beef up BCH even more. So this is currently completely unreasonable on credit cards, but we could make apps that are installable on smart cards. So you could be like, okay, I'm going to upgrade my smart contract with this swipe, and then I have recurrent payments. So I'm sending a transaction very so often. Or I have a last will recovery from Karol Czeszkowski, who wrote like a dead man switch, where you can designate someone who's like, okay, if I die, then this guy can redeem the coins after 6 months or something, which would be useful if you have a lot of coins on there. Maybe you could add an automatic cash shuffle. Still has to be worked out. Or which thing would be very useful if you could have many tokens, different SLP tokens on this card. So you could be like, hey, I'm gonna pay with honest coin, yeah. USDH. So you could pay with a stable coin that's backed by an exchange, and get and be able to pay with US dollar. So it would be literally like a credit card from the feeling. You would actually pay US dollar, but the fees would be around 300 times that, 300 times lower than that of a Visa. So it is a real strong competitor. And maybe we'll even be able to add or link a decentralized stablecoin similar to MakerDAO, and anyone knows about that. Yeah, I think I added some more slides because I wasn't able to time it, but that's a nice wrap up.
So, all right, do we have any questions? I think it's the first time I've ever seen a product demo work. Well done.
Go front, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got 2 questions. How did you broadcast the transaction to Roger without an internet connection?
Yeah, so this phone is connected to the internet.
Yeah.
And the way it works, I tap the phone, and then I get this piece of information that's able to unlock the coins. And then the phone constructs the whole. It looks at the current UTXO, and then it builds the transaction, and then the phone broadcasts the transaction. So if the merchant doesn't broadcast the transaction, you don't lose any money from your card. Does that answer your question?
Wait, I mean, if you haven't got any internet on your phone, how did you broadcast the internet? How did you broadcast the payments to that?
No, you have to have internet.
In this situation, the merchant has the
Yeah. So it's sender offline.
The payment terminal in the demo, isn't it? There's another person that you didn't have. The person carrying the card walks into the shop. You're the shop, and Roger is the owner of the shop.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. So the person carrying the card had no internet. That's the whole point.
Yes.
So the merchant needs internet.
So do you mean you paid them using the card?
Yes. You go to the store and be like,
okay, got it. And second question. Do you need a card, or that will be done on the phone?
Yes, Android phones currently have a host card emulation, which means you can pretend to be a smart card. I hope they will add that on iOS soon. Somebody's getting it.
I thought the same before the awesome demo. I'm curious about the SDK part on the card itself. Like, do they provide any, and which languages are they in? Like I guess you also store the private keys, not only the notes on the card, right? So you have to sign some message. And
yeah, so this card has a private key on it. What's your question?
okay, but you have to sign the message, so you call the programmatic API for it, right? Or something like that.
What language is on card?
Oh, this is a Java card, so it uses Java, which is not my favorite language, but I have to use it. Yeah. I also have to use Java on Android, but so pretty.
Life's hard.
How do you enforce? So you have a limit on how much a merchant can. So the smart contract has so they produce how much they're going to take in the transaction, and so is a limit in the smart contract. Is that how do you stop a merchant from lying how much it says?
You don't. You trust the merchant.
Yeah.
Like there are ways to mitigate that, but currently, if you scan a credit card device, then you also trust. Then you have some trust. So there are ways to mitigate that, which cut into UX. So for people who really care about that would be a good option. You could add a TAN, like you generate a couple of numbers and you can use them just one time for a certain threshold. Like you have a TAN for $10, a TAN for $100. But that's cumbersome. But for people who are afraid that they are going to get scammed, then it's a viable solution that doesn't cut too much into the user experience. And I think the one thing we have to focus on is user experience with those, because one signature, as I told you, takes like 180 milliseconds. The hardest part is broadcasting the transaction.
Can you pass it back? Someone behind you. Okay.
I can't catch. You're able to. So, are you imagining that the person carrying the card would perhaps have a large quantity of cash on the card, or are you thinking that they would have a small amount and many cards?
Neither. Right. That's not mutually exclusive options. I think they will have one card with a bit of cash on it, and then maybe another card with a lot of cash that they transfer in between. Or they will have two interlocked smart contracts where one refunds the card on a regular schedule. So you get like the same feeling with credit cards where you have like a certain threshold that you can spend per day. And if you exceed that, then you have to wait until you're able to send again. But there are maybe other ways. Those are just the ones I came up with. And I would be very excited to see how people use it. Because actually you can do a Diffie-Hellman transfer between two smart cards. And so they are like entangled. So anything that happens on that card would also happen on that other card. And then you could send that to a relative somewhere in the, I don't know, somewhere. And then you could send funds there. You could directly fund their wallet without them even noticing.
Yeah, what would happen if you lost the card?
So currently your money would be gone. Yeah, I mean there's an interface to retrieve the private key currently, but I will probably disable that or so. But it would probably be a smart idea to get the seed like you used to with a phone wallet, that you just restore. You go to the merchant, you go to a card merchant, or you install a phone app. Like, okay, I want my money back. I lost my card. Or alternatively, you do what I just told you. You buy a couple of cards, entangle them, and then you just keep a couple of them safe. And then if you lose one card, you can use the other card to get the funds back.
Stop the card? Would that function to be able to stop? Would you be able to stop the card, like, so no one can use it?
Yeah, you could just take the money out. And if they have a PIN, then it would be hard to it would probably be impossible to get the money from it.
You can buy cards with pins, with PIN numbers.
So one way would be to use those that don't have a PIN, and then enter it on the phone.
Yeah.
Then you have to trust the merchant that they won't store a PIN, but I mean that's a way. But there are actually power cards, they're called, that have a battery in them. They are like 10 times more expensive than those, maybe even more, but they have a PIN, and they some even have a display. So that issue you raised would be solved by those cards. They would just say, okay, I'm going to send $10 million to this address, do you agree? And then you're going to be like, no. And yeah. And those would obviously be more expensive, but they would have the same user experience. But they would solve basically all the issues related to smart cards.
Thanks, Tobias.
One more question.
Yes.
You previously said that you need a level of trust with the merchant.
Yeah.
What if you went to a store and it was a merchant you'd never seen before, an unknown merchant, and unbeknownst to the merchant themselves, someone else had replaced the card machine and was able to copy all the data from the card?
Yeah, so there are ways to mitigate that. It always has to be like, okay, what's a realistic scenario? I think this might be a realistic scenario. So what this card could do be like, okay, if I haven't seen this yet, then I have to authorize this merchant, and then maybe you add a second pin, or you add the pin, you enter the pin, and then it's like, okay, I know this merchant, I can now send money to it, to them, and then if the scammer replaces the card Tobias, then the card will be like, oh, I haven't seen this yet. Do you want to add it? And then be like, oh wait, I already added it. And maybe there are ways to add services that detect such behavior, which would add trust to those services, because they would be like, okay, I'm okay with that transfer. It looks legit. There are a lot of ways to mitigate those things, but I think there's ample opportunity to resolve those issues. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys very much. We're just coming to some closing remarks real quick. I really want to thank Brett, Roger, Rosco, and Tobias for coming out tonight and teaching us so much. Last, we're going to hand it off to Richard, and he'll just close it out. Thank you guys for spending time away from your families and your loved ones tonight. I think the more time you spend in the crypto community, you'll find people that have a slightly different perspective in their views, and it's so awesome to come together and share that in one space. And we hope you come back to these events. We'll be hosting them all year long, and thank you very much, Richard, for all the efforts tonight.
Cool, thank you. If you don't mind just bearing with me for 1 minute, I'm just going to do a couple of shout-outs. Are you cool there? I'll stand. Can I stand here? No, don't have that. Don't have that either. Cool, so if anyone's going to the pub afterwards, it's the Hoop and Grapes. It's just down the road. Haven't onboarded them yet, so you might have to pay with fiat. Shout out to Bitcoin Cash Notes. This is the note that you saw. Who had that, Tobias? They actually tried to post us a bunch of these notes tonight to give out and have a look at and whatnot, but unfortunately the government decided that this was not something that could be imported, and it's currently sitting at a customs depot in Camden somewhere. Shout out to Blockchain, our incredible host. Thank you so much to Nick and Nikki, who have been an incredible team. Steve, Melise, you've been wonderful. Bitcoin.com, who sent their chairman to give a talk. Coinspice, who are live streaming. The bar people who operated the bar, they take Bitcoin Cash. So if you're looking for a very professional bar service, they are absolutely incredible. Jake over there is the founder, and if you hire him, you can pay him in Bitcoin Cash. Eat BCH, if anybody wants to get their phone out quickly and do a quick donation. Anyone got their wallet? So these guys are in South Sudan and Venezuela, and what they do is, if you donate Bitcoin Cash, then they use it to buy food and they feed their local communities. They take photographs of the people eating the food with a little picture of the latest block hash, so it's sort of like a proof of recentness. And so if anybody wants to make a donation, you can do a quick scan and send a small amount of Bitcoin Cash there. Awesome. Everyone got it? Okay. Shout out to Cyber Capital, Justin Bonds, all the way over from Amsterdam. They are an investment firm specializing in crypto, and they are big on Bitcoin Cash. It represents the majority of their portfolio. So if you want to talk to someone about Bitcoin Cash investing, Justin Bonds over there is the man. Do you want to stand up quickly so people can see you? Hello, cool. Shout out to Coinbird. Where are you guys? Over there. So these guys are a super easy on-ramp for cryptocurrency in the UK, and they're currently doing a crowdfunding round through Crowdcube. So if you want a way to invest in a cryptocurrency business on a small scale, unfortunately equity tokens are not allowed by the government, so we have to use traditional share registers and whatnot, and Crowdcube actually allows funding on that basis. So speak to those guys afterwards if you're interested. This is us, the London Bitcoin Cash Meetup. that's not our donation address, that's our Telegram channel. So if you want to find out about future events, don't scan it with your Bitcoin wallet, scan it with your camera or browser, I don't know, yeah, if you just scan it with your camera, it should take you to the Telegram app, straight into our channel for the London Bitcoin Cash Meetup, and we'd love to have you on there helping us, give us your feedback. We want to make the events as interesting as possible. Cool. And yeah, so we got another half hour here, and then when we hit 9:30, if you can help by just putting down your drink wherever you are and heading straight for the elevator so that these guys can get started with the cleanup. And Hoop and Grapes will carry on there. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.